Good morning. My name is Janice Mohammed, and I'm a very proud Afghan descendant of my grandfather, who was Pir Mohammed, and he married a lady by the name of Ruby Rita Stewart. Her family was Scots people, and they met and married and had 7 children. The eldest was a boy named Gould. Then there was Gould, then there was Zelika, a daughter, and then Dan, and then there was Beeb and John, and a little baby called Nurajan. And Uncle Dan was called Nua, but they called him Dan. And they were all very proud children of Pir Mohammed and Ruby Rita Stewart. Ruby Rita Stewart was accidentally shot and left Grandad with the 7 children. And so he took them into Beltana, and that was where they stayed for a while. And yes, he had a very hard time, but he was a marvellous man. He did a lot of work. That's what he came here to do, was to work. And he worked in with all the other Afghan people, and they opened up such a lot of the whole of this country. In every state there was Afghans and their camels. And so this has come about. Our committee that was formed, because we had nothing. There was just Pam and there was just a few descendants, but nothing had been put together for a committee that we did that, and there was 7 in the group. Now my husband is in care, and there's only Pam and I on the outskirts of the Afghan pioneers. And so with this committee that we had formed, we did a lot of work in various places, and we had gatherings. Well, we had a big gathering in 1986 at the Standpipe Hotel in Port Augusta, and that was the area of the Outback Games as well. And so they gave an award. My mother and I, we donated the camel stands, like the camel trophies, I should say, not stands, trophies. And so Charlie Dardler from Marree was the oldest living male, and Miriam was the oldest living female. And so they each got a trophy. And then after that, we, what you might say, branched out and did other memorials in regards to the Afghans. And then in 1986, a man by the name of Donald Aziz, he came from Sanctuary Point, and he wanted to acknowledge and try and waken Australian people what the Afghan cameleers did. And so I grew up in a small country town, and I was just Janice Mohammed, no different to any other child that was Smith, Brown or whatever. And it wasn't until I met Don in 1986 that, gee whiz, they're out there. And then I said to him one day, you know, you talk about auntie this and uncle that, and you seem to have so many family. And he said, yes, well, my mother was one of 14. And so from then on, I became associated with the Afghan pioneer descendants. The day with the lovely big hats. And that was a big event in Port Augusta. Mayor Baluch, she opened up the event, and it was very well received. And of course now today people go and look at that big huge piece of rock that was put there by a friend of ours. And so then that's our committee as it was in those days. This is Don Aziz, the man that started the camel trek, and this is Mona Wilson's son. Who was that? Eric Sultan. That's right, Eric Sultan. Yes, and Mona Wilson. And then there's Pamela, myself, my husband, and little Hassan. And at that stage, we were the committee. And as I said a few moments ago, there's only Pamela and I left, and my husband is in care. Don has passed on, so has Mona, and so has Lil. And sadly, there's just the two of us that are now left. This is just another day when we were at the Broken Hill for a celebration up there in acknowledgement of the Afghan pioneers. We always acknowledge them as a group because that's how they came out here. As a group, they're not. They weren't, they didn't come or weren't allowed to come just single. They had to come in a group, and I wonder if they were the second group of people to come to Australia, because they landed in different states, of course, different towns, different states, but the odd German or the odd Dutchman might come in from another country, but the Gans came in as a group. So after the Aboriginals were the Afghans, the second lot of, or second group of people to come into this country to serve this country with a purpose. And that's the purpose that they came, that they take, deliver, and how they went, how they travelled. And if they went on a particular part of the road or part of where they were going, and it was too wet for the camels, well, they would go miles up further or down this way or another way, away from all the water. They had no, like we've got today, we can just tap into the machine in the car, and the GPS gives us all the details of how to go and where to go to our destination. But all they had was, as we know, the moon, the sun, the stars, their compass, and they had their Quran, which is their Bible, the Muslim Bible, because that was their faith, and so that faith upheld them to go to their destination. And that was not, they had no actual route to go by, they had to make their own. And sometimes, you know, they would have to change from one area to another, depending on the weather, the climate, what sun was about, and if it was too hot, well, what did they do? If it was too cold, What did they do? You know, we have so many questions today that we could ask, that those days nothing was mentioned, nothing was said, and it was just taken as everyday life. And so we have so many questions that we just can't find the answers now, because we have lost so much of history by our families passing on, and they never spoke very much at all. Unless you ask a particular question, there was never any answer to anything, because the Gans never spoke a great deal. They kept to themselves, of course, and in Marree, they were one side of the town with the Aboriginals, and over the other side, that's where the white people lived. But Marree, of course, became a Gan town, as so many others, but Marree seemed to hang in there. Beltana, that's got a few people in it living there, but it's not as prominent as a Afghan town as what Marree is. Farina is the same. Lyndhurst, those towns up through there, they haven't got that Afghan wording so much as what Marree has. People say Marree, they straight away think of the Afghans, because they lived and worked there. And so much of history that we have lost, that it would be wonderful if we could find out more. And so what we have got now, we should preserve. And I've brought along today something to show that I am going to donate to some place that will preserve and look after the possessions that I've got. And so I'm hoping in time that the Australian government will recognise what the Afghan pioneers did for this country. They carried this country from 1840 right through till about 1936. And that's when the trucks, in the meantime, had started to come rolling in. And by 1936, the trucks were doing the carting that, as they classed, the old Gans did. And Sultan Aziz, he was 84 years of age when he left Broken Hill, and took his last load to Durham Down Station. And Durham Down Station is in Queensland. And he went from Broken Hill through to Queensland at 84 years of age, and then he let his camels go and he came back to Broken Hill, a very sad man, because he did not want to have to release his animals that had been means of transport for this country. And so I will just show you two things that I have got, that this is what I'm going to be taking care of. This one is the Catechism of the Muslim religion, that this was printed in Lahore, and it was paid for and brought out here by Muhammad Alam. And of course he was one of the herbalists of South Australia, and he's well known all over. And then I have this Quran that belonged to an old Afghan herbalist. And so I would like these and another book I would like to see it all preserved. That I was fortunate that I had two aunties of my father's sisters, and so I got one from one and one from the other, and bits of information from one and bits of information from the other, but I never really queried too much because, well, nobody was interested, and we just went on with everyday life and didn't pay too much attention to the Afghans at all, but at the same time we were their descendants. But what we should have asked and what we didn't is how we are today. We would love to know more, but of course it can't be told because we have lost our history books, so to speak, because our ancestors have now passed on and we have nobody that we can actually consult or tell us exactly how things were. We can only surmise, we can only think, we can talk between ourselves, and Pam and I sort of work things out between us at times, and as I've said many times, it's been what you might say a partnership, because without our history and heritage, Pam could not write books. But at the same time, she has written about our ancestors, and that's what this is all about as well. It's another way of putting out there what our ancestors did. And so if it wasn't for our ancestors, she wouldn't be able to write the books, as I said earlier. But at the same time, if we didn't have her to write the books, well then the history could not be put out there. And that's what this is all about, is we have to show, we have to let people know how the Gans portrayed what they came here to do and how wonderful they went about their work. No fuss, no bother, and to think the camel handlers loaded and unloaded their animals morning and night. It's unbelievable. Sometimes, of course, they just took the bulk off and raised the saddle up a bit so the air could get underneath and then put it back down again. But there's just so much, as I said earlier, that we would love to know, and that's the sad part. This is just a photo of my ancestors that I am so proud of. I've, ever since 1986, when I really became aware of my grandfather's history and his wife Ruby, that I have got to be fortunate enough to have two aunties that, as I said, my father's sisters, that one gave me something, and yes, they didn't want it. And so I was interested in my grandfather's history, and that's how I come to have that. Now, and that's a photo with my grandfather and my grandmother. She was about 13 years of age, apparently, and that was classed as a school photo of her. So that's my ancestors. Now, this is one of the memorials that we did at Port Augusta. We had the first memorial, which was done at the wharf, but that didn't last very long. It was got scratched and damaged, and of course vandals damaged it. But then the Port Augusta City Council have really put a lovely memorial together for us now in Port Augusta. And so that's just a showing of the Port Augusta Memorial. Oh yes, well, see, we've got people here that were there that day. There's Lil Hassan there, of course. There's the mayor who was Baluch, Joy Baluch at the time. Mona Wilson is there. And I can't quite see the other people because of my eyesight at this stage with the cataract that I've got and that. So that's now that's again descendants that's at Marree. Well, we tried to achieve recognition and make people aware of, once again, you see, the history and the heritage of our people, and that's what all of this is all about, is bringing the descendants together so we can all talk about who's related to who, and you know, all the names, the Hassans, the Mullahs, the Mushas, the Zaidas, the Mohammeds. There was just so many families that the reunions are at least bringing the people together, and that's really what this is all about, is to let people know that the Afghans were out there and they were to be recognised. Oh yes, see the Aboriginal women, well, see, my grandfather married a Scots girl, Gul Muhammad. He married a French girl that came out here on a boat, of course, and apparently the story goes that Esmeralda and her sister were at the wharf, and the other sister was pushed onto the boat to France, and Esmeralda was on the boat to Australia. So, and Gul Muhammad, another Afghan pioneer, he married Desiree Esmeralda Muhammad, she became. And so some of the Afghan men, they married Aboriginal women. Well, there wasn't a lot of white people around at that time. And of course on the stations there was a lot of Aboriginal men who had sisters and daughters and that sort of thing, and so the Aboriginals, well, they were mixing in with the Aboriginals. They had them sometimes working for them, and somehow or other they started to employ the Aboriginal. The Afghan man might need a hand to load or unload or do some sort of work, help him, and so he would turn to the Aboriginal to help him, and so they somehow or other they managed and they got on and they helped each other. And so of course sometimes the Afghan would marry an Aboriginal lady. My uncle, he was one that did that. My uncle Gould, he married an Aboriginal woman, Yes, they were together for many years, and then they were divorced, but they were married together for quite a few years, and so that's how the generation of some of the Afghans and Aboriginals coming together, marrying the same as everybody else does, and they just mixed in with society at that time. Yes.
Do you remember Rocky Khan?
Rocky.
Rocky Khan, who lived at Beltana, he had a family.
Yes.
Namath Khan, Rocky
Yes. That was Namath Khan, and he was an old Afghan. Well, I'll say old Afghan. I suppose it's an expression that's come about, but we'll just say he was a Ghan, and he was married to an Aboriginal woman. Her name was Galana, and they had a family, Rocky and Nasmina and all of that family. They were two of the children that come to mind straight away. And they lived in Beltana, and when my parents were married in Adelaide, they went to Beltana for their honeymoon, and the family there well received Mum and Dad, and Dad was given a walking stick carved by an Aboriginal person, and the walking stick is carved in the shape of a snake, and Mum was given 2 boomerangs, and on one of those boomerangs is written, "Thy word is thy truth." And so that's how the Aboriginal felt that carved that boomerang. And so they're 2 of my keepsakes that I've got, that I would like to pass them on to some institution or place that would put them in a glass cabinet and preserve them for the many years to come, because at this stage I have them and I look after them, and we've got to keep those parts of history that have never, as we say, come out of the woodwork, but we need to bring it out and make it part of Australia's history.